Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Teresa Tim. I'm the General Manager of Midwest Family Dash, and I am delighted that you're here today to learn about Google Analytics. But I'm even more excited because I get to introduce two of my friends to you this afternoon. Andy and Kyle from Midwest Family Madison are both outstanding digital experts that will speak in normal person speak. That's what I'm so excited about for you. They're not going to get all in the weeds and all technical. They're going to help demystify Google Analytics for you and help you figure this stuff out. And I, for one, can't wait to get started. So Andy, please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, TK. I have been excited about this topic for probably 6 months. So I hope we can get through all the content. I'm excited. Welcome to the Wicked Smart webinar. If you've never been on one before, our goal is to kind of bring you tips, tools, and resources to help your business. I'm excited about talking about a topic that is more along the lines of helping create your business's new normal going forward. And hopefully done talking about all the stuff that you'll see in the media and stuff like this. So yeah, I'm excited about this topic. It's something I'm super passionate about. And I'm also really excited about having Kyle on here with me because he shares my passion with this. And we talk probably way too much about this kind of stuff and get more excited about the average person. So, and hopefully that, I'm sure that will show from as we each kind of dive into the topic. So, but we're both a little bit nerdy about it, but that'll be for your benefit because we'll hopefully dive into this topic to help you and your business and sort it out. So I'm really proud to be associated, have Kyle on our team and to introduce you to him. If you have not met him yet, he is one of the fantastic digital marketing strategists we have here at Midwest Family. So at that, I will let Kyle take over and kind of go into the topic of what he's going to talk about today. So. It's like you're muted, Kyle.
Thanks, Andy, and thank you, TK. I'm going to go over kind of some of the, high-end, high-level things about Google Analytics, some of the things you should be looking for as you try to understand the success of how your website's operating for you. And I'm going to do my best to keep it very understood. So at the end of the day, it's what is Google Analytics? And Google Analytics is a free digital analytics tool, and it provides you information so you can track the statistics on your website and maximize it from those statistics that you get to see what the potential is and how you could change things on your website and change the way you market your business to get more results. So my goal for you to go over these next few slides is to have an understanding of the key metrics, what you should look for within those metrics, and how to maximize the potential of your Google Analytics and your website. So in this slide, very high level, and for some people, this might be stuff that you already know, but for some, as I've experienced, as I talk with clients here in Madison, some clients don't have this stuff set up. Some clients don't know what this means, and there are people out there who haven't explained to them what it is. So I'm going to just go through this a little bit. In this first slide, you'll see when you come to your Google Analytics homepage, it'll show you users. That's the number of people who's visit your site at least once during any time period. And I picked a month for this time period. The next one is sessions. This is the number of times that your site has been viewed. Now, a user and sessions, you'll see those numbers are different because a user can have multiple sessions in that time period. So that's the number of times your site was visited versus the users. Bounce rate is a critical one. Bounce rate occurs when someone visits your website, they're on a single page and they leave very quickly. This is an indicator that they're not really getting much out of your website, that your website probably is not adding value. And this is kind of one of the first things you can look at to see whether or not, if you have a high bounce rate, and it's, above 80 and stuff like that, then you're probably not adding as much value with your website as you could. And then the last one is session duration. So this is the amount of time spent on your website, which is a good indicator of whether or not people are finding value and finding what they need as they scroll through your website. So we can go to the next one. You should know these things because they're a great high level indicator of how well your site is performing, right? So you may be thinking, am I getting enough traffic to my site? You know, the phone's not ringing from there, or I'm not getting, you know, submissions. Well, what's going on? Maybe you don't have enough, you know, traffic. And are people finding what they're looking for? Are they on your site for a while and looking at you as an expert because they're able to read and comprehend the things that you have on there, or are they leaving right away? The next thing I'll go over is kind of acquisition metrics. This is a great tool within Google Analytics that lets you know where the traffic is coming from to your website. And these are all different areas that they can come from. So paid traffic is traffic that is generated through pay-per-click ads or Google ad campaigns. In this diagram over here, you'll see that this particular client has about 35% of their traffic through paid. And then they have, you know, 35 or 34% through organic, and looks like 20% is through direct. Now, organic traffic is traffic that is natural. This isn't paid traffic, but they found this through the Google search engines. And this is where SEO comes into place, search engine optimization, optimizing your site to be found for the services and the things that you do. Now, direct visitors, they typed in your URL or they have it saved and bookmarked. So they're just typing that in and going straight to your website. This is a great indicator that you have a very good brand, that people know your name and they know who you are because they're searching and looking for you directly. You'll notice that referral traffic in this case is a little bit smaller, but this traffic can come from sources that are outside of Google. This can be somebody, you know, if you have a targeted display campaign, or if you have backlinks or links on another website. Well, you know, maybe it's you're part of the Chamber of Commerce and somebody goes from the Chamber of Commerce and gets to your site. That could be a referral. And social is exactly how it sounds. This is website traffic that has come to your website because they've gotten there through Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, any social media, LinkedIn as well. It's important to know these different channels because of how you may have your marketing dollars spread out. It's a nice indicator of what are your money-making channels and what's bringing traffic. And so you can know how to change your marketing tactics that you're doing in maybe social if you want to increase that traffic, or what you're doing with search engine optimization if you want to increase that traffic, and what channels do you need to improve, and analyzing what channels are working and understanding how you can repeat that and keep it going. So at the end of the day, traffic's great, knowing your channels are awesome, but it's about generating sales, right? Conversions and goals, and setting up goals within Google Analytics, which is a pretty simple task. Is a great way to track that. And I'm going to show you a few goals here that you should probably have set up in your Google Analytics that will help you.
And Kyle, excuse me, before you start or go any further, I just want to let people know that if they've got questions throughout, they can put their question in the chat box. I'll be monitoring those. And before we segue into, you know, lots more slides, I'll just put that out there right now. If there's anybody that's got a question, feel free to start the chat and we will integrate those throughout the presentation, as well as leave some time at the end to be able to answer as many questions as we can. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So here is, you know, a client that we have, and here are some basic goals that we have set up and why we want to track these goals. I'll talk about a few of them. Looks like I'll talk about a few of them. Okay, so a contact form submission or a quote submission, and you get to name these goals what you want. But in this case, we wanted to track how many contact form submissions they were getting. For this particular client, this was a request for service form. So in this particular case, we were trying to see how many people actually filled out that form and submitted to their business over a month period. And in this particular case, the month before they had 13, but in the current month they had 35, which was a great indicator of increased success.
Kyle, excuse me, before you
Yeah.
move forward, there's a couple questions before we go on regarding bounce rate. What constitutes a bad bounce rate, and what is a bounce? Can you explain that again?
Yeah, absolutely. So a bad bounce rate can really vary on what kind of website you have, and what industry you're in. Typically, I like to try to keep our clients' bounce rates below 70%. We try to keep our bounce rates below 70% because it does mean that somebody viewed a page, but sometimes that can also mean they viewed a page, they got the number, they left, and they called from a phone. And so we constitute for some of that. But I would say a bad bounce rate, if your bounce rates are 75 and up, you're probably not adding very much value. And this particular client, when they had their old website, they were in the bounce rates in the 80%. So when we redid their website and stuff, we saw a significant decrease in their bounce rates over time.
Another
Um,
question is session time. Is there a universal theme for, what constitute a good length of time for session? What's a goal for session time?
Yeah. So typically, it again, that varies per industry and what kind of content you have on your website. But I'd say if you could get between a minute, 2 minutes, in there consistently, that's pretty good. You don't really see a ton go over that, just depending on what it is, or if it's video heavy and it's a lot of videos that are engaging and stuff like that, you might see more. But I, even in the goals a little bit later, go over some things that you can look for and some goals you can set up for those indicators.
That's great. And one more question regarding the goals. As you're looking at this slide that we're on right now, for those
Mhm.
that don't have these goals set up, where do you find instructions? Do you Google it?
Yeah. So when you can Google it in Google and find that, but that's a pretty time consuming. I would say consult with the marketing people that you're working with, the marketing team that you're working with, or if you want to look it up and try to do it yourself, you can. And Google, within Google Analytics, it has some instructions of how to set up those goals as well. So it just depends on your time and your capacity of how long you want to try to optimize it and make sure it's working, and so on and so forth. Does that answer the question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Perfect. Um, the other thing that you can see here is you can also set up a phone call goal. So the craziest thing is people wonder how many people got to my site and how many people called. Well, we can't track every phone call, but we can track the people who clicked from their mobile device and called you from their mobile device straight from your website. So that's another great indicator of trying to see conversions. People are calling for service or inquiring about your business. Now you mentioned time on site. So these are two ones that we set up. We put 5 or more minutes on site as something that we wanted to track, and 4 or more page visits, something that we wanted to track. These are very nice high-level indicators that people are researching your business and they're spending some time on your site. So they're most likely going to contact you if they're spending that much time on your site, especially when you look at if the average session time is 1.5 minutes and these people are spending 5 or more minutes on your website. They're probably reading into it and liking the content and researching and contacting you. The same thing with spending 4 or more pages. They may have come for a particular service, but maybe they found a blog they found interesting, or maybe they found another service of yours that they didn't know you did that was interesting because you talked about it in detail. The people who offer the most information in a way that keeps the people engaged are going to have a better rate of, leveling up those people in the services from, I came to your site for this, but I also need this. Yeah, with that, any questions about the things that I put together there? No?
I
Okay.
don't see any coming up in the chat, so we can, if you think of things, you can put those in chat and we'll pause at the end. But Andy, you're on deck. Go ahead.
All right. Well, this stuff is really exciting for me, but I'm also kind of an analytic nerd. So it can be pretty overwhelming. And I remember when I first learned this stuff is I probably spent a week inside Google Analytics. They have a free certification that you can go through. So if you're the type of person that wants to like really get their hands dirty, you can do that same thing and you can become an expert over the next month or so, or you can have an employee do it. Or you can bring in an expert like the people here at Midwest Family, or your website person. So just ask the right questions. Um, my goal for you today is one of the things that I won't cover is I won't get too far in the weeds because there is so many articles about how-tos and getting started and Google Analytics 101 where you could spend an afternoon and get light years ahead of your competitors, and it would be time well spent. So, but I'm not going to kind of do a lot of walkthroughs because, like I said, this could be a 3-day course if we did that, right? So my goal, and one of the reasons why I brought Kyle on, is to kind of really start moving the momentum and the ball towards the why you should be here, why you're here, what's next, what questions should you ask, so you can bring and surround yourself with the experts around you, whether it be internally or externally, to show what is my return on investment? What is my return on investment and time into this kind of thing? How do I get a return on investment on my website? How can I see which marketing platforms are performing best for me? What tools? All those different questions that you, as you're investing your hard-earned dollars into marketing, should have data and analytics to help guide it. Now, one thing, it's not going to give you all the answers with how sophisticated all this stuff is. It's not going to paint a 100% clear picture. It's meant to be kind of be like marketing hypothesis. You can make a guess. You could go and try to fix it. You can test and adapt, and monitor. It's not something you can set and forget because stuff changes. You got to monitor it. You got to pay attention to it. So that's why it's nice to have an expert on your side because you have a business to run. So I wanted to go over some of the key questions that you as a business owner should ask. So first and foremost, what part of the funnel am I trying to improve? Which part of the funnel is your foremost priority? In my opinion, that is where I would start if I were in your shoes. I start at the bottom because the bottom of the funnel, if you look at it, kind of the shop and decision, improving tools and structure because if you fix the bottom, everything you pour in the top will become better. You'll get better ROI from. And I'll show you what I mean by that in an example pretty soon. But this is why Google Analytics can really kind of help you improve your ability to prove conversions on your website, or by conversion, I mean like people actually doing what you want them to do and where are they getting stuck. Because if your website is broken, you're just going to dump a bunch of marketing dollars from your budget into a marketing strategy or tactic, and you're going to be wasting money, which for anything like me, I hate wasting money. So another question is, what tactic? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to brand, or are you a direct response? Now, branding campaigns are, the awareness size of things. So most of you in here are familiar with those types of strategies. And there's kind of the other strategy where it's more of a direct response. So it's like, hey, I want sales right now. This is what I want. These are kind of like, they have a strong call to action. You're asking them to do something right away, typically incentivizing it and attaching an offer to it to get them to do it right now. So this graph that I included here was from a conference out of the UK, from the Wizard of someone from the Wizard of Oz shared with us back at Brand Camp back in November. That what is the perfect split between a branding strategy and a direct response strategy? And they had said about a 60% branding, 40% direct response. So that's a great guideline. You kind of have to make your decision for your business, what you want to do with that. But how do you use Google Analytics to measure both? Like, which one do you want to start with? And that'll be up for you to decide. And I included the link here if you want to look at some of the other graphs they included in there. As a marketing kind of graph nerd, I love this stuff. So if you like this kind of stuff, we'll send these slides afterwards so you can dive in and spend an afternoon nerding out on it. So so what are some other questions you can ask? So so I kind of talked about this a bit. is as you're trying to measure this stuff, if it's a branding campaign, it can't be short term. You have to have a long-term approach on this stuff. It has to be trending. You have to look past data. And the one thing about Google Analytics is if it's not on there right and it's not set up correctly, you don't have the right filters, you're going to get crappy information, and it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. So, and you can't go backwards. So you have to have it set up now. So 12 months from now, you can say, hey, what actually worked this year? Or did it match up with how we thought it was going to go? So you can look backwards and see, like, okay, did this campaign and that campaign make a difference as it trended compared to last year or compared to 3 years ago? As you start to get a little bit more age data, you can really do a good job of guiding your marketing strategy. So now when you're looking at branding, some basic stuff you could look at is increased searches of your name, that direct traffic that Kyle talked about. If you have it set up correctly, that can be a nice guide for you. Sometimes Google Analytics, if you don't have the right strategy laid out, you can have a lot of fluff in there. I won't get too far in the weeds with that, but I want you to kind of pick out one thing here. Now, pro tip here is get a Google PPC campaign for your business's name, because if you don't, your competitors could. And it's a nice way to gauge the branding, and they're pretty cheap clicks because people are Googling your name. So, because your competitor could go in and buy your name. And if you're not there, they might be stealing some of the businesses from you. So now, as far as a direct response, attribution is important. So what attribution is where it came from. So it's a technical term. Most business owners, they get stuck on like last click attribution. Like, what did this person last do to get to my website? And it's one way to look at it, but you need to have an open mind on the customer journey towards, like, there's going to be a series of events they're going to take. If it just so happened the last thing they clicked was a Google ad, your Google ad person will be super happy, but what about everything else? So you can kind of design your Google Analytics so it looks at the picture you want to be painted. So these are all very strategic conversations that you won't have answers to right now, but something that is just asking more intelligent questions. That's what my goal for you is. So a pro tip is look into this thing called UTM codes. It's very technical. You'll need some help with it if you're not a technical person, but UTM codes essentially is like a tracking dart on a link. So if you had an email campaign, you would put a custom link in those emails, and it would tell Google Analytics all those clicks came from this email campaign. And get very specific to where you could say it could be the month, it could be that specific email, that specific Facebook ad with that picture, with this headline. I mean, you can get very laser focused on it and get really far in the weeds, but as you start refining and improving, and that's kind of more like a sprint strategy, don't start with that. But I wanted to get you excited about this stuff towards, like, holy crap, if we have this stuff laid out right, we could really make a difference on how we're improving our ability to guide strategic thinking and choosing the right tools to grow your business. So,
Andy, I'm going to pause you here for just a second
sure.
before you move forward and have a conversation regarding Google Analytics. It's free. And
Yes.
so if there are people on this call that don't really have a consultant or somebody helping them understand how their website is working, what is something that they can, as far as a do-it-yourself, or to try to figure this out? You know, how do they even go about reading a report? What are they looking for?
I would say if you want to go in to get your hands dirty and you're just getting going with this, there is a Google Analytics certification for beginners. So spend an afternoon, dive into that, and they really walk you through from start to finish, basic language with video walkthroughs. It's all free. Just Google Analytics certifications, and they'll have for beginners, for experts, and all that stuff. So, or you can pick your admin assistant and have her do it. You know, might be a good time to do it with everyone sitting at home right now. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people, they might have more time on their hands. So
another real-time question before you move forward is, what if you don't use a UTM code? Will the referral source still show as a link from an email, for instance?
It should show it, but it won't be as specific as you want it to be, because it could be like, it could link it to like MailChimp. If that's it could put everything under the MailChimp umbrella, or it could just put it in what Google thinks it should go. So that kind of sorts it, right? Where a UTM code, you can get very specific with that link to where if it was March's email, you could have all of the traffic source tracked from March's newsletter for the
Okay,
past 6
again,
months.
slow your roll, nerd. And I love you when I say that. UTM, explain what does that mean for people on this call that don't know what the heck you're talking about.
UTM is just, it's what Google calls it. So don't get too in the weeds of like what it stands for or anything. But basically, it gives Google Analytics a custom code, essentially, right? So it tells Google Analytics where you want this link parked as you're kind of tracking where they came from. So if you're doing Facebook, if you're doing LinkedIn, if you're doing an email newsletter, a print newsletter, all of those different places could have a different link, right? If you only listed your website on each of those different traffic sources, that you may not get as good enough information inside of Google Analytics, and it might put it all into direct, right? That's why direct can get pretty big when you're looking at your reporting and tracking. But I mean, and this is like a pro tip, so don't start here. Don't get too overwhelmed with this, but I only mention it because well, one, it gets me excited, but it's also a strategy that you can build towards, right? So it's not for the novice, it's not for the beginner, but it can get pretty exciting, especially if you have a multi-phase kind of omnichannel type marketing approach. You can have a really good picture that you can paint, in the moment and over the past quarter, in the past year, as the data starts to improve and get better and filter the right way. So I knew I'd get a lot of questions on that, and that's okay. But I like to leave some pro tips in there for the people that might be a few pages ahead of everybody else. So, but don't get too overwhelmed by it. Okay?
Yep, thanks. Keep going.
Okay, so other quick questions to ask about conversion. What is a conversion for your business? Now, Kyle talked about contact forms. This could be a phone call. If it were my business, I love email addresses as counting that for your conversion, because you can have some really, it makes the data a lot more it's lower on the customer journey, right? So it's much easier to kind of like, if you can assess a value of an email address and the value of that is to your business, it's much easier to get an email address than it is to get someone to fill out your contact form. So the numbers therefore increase, so you can have more data that way, because a lot of times most websites are only going to convert 1 to 3% of the time. So and if a conversion is a contact form for you or a phone call, that means you're going to need 1,000 people to get 10 phone calls or 10 contact forms. So if you can increase or shift your strategy a little bit to where you can get more conversions, you can have more data to play with. So, and if you're an e-commerce company, you're probably very familiar with this sort of things, because you probably tend to be a few more steps ahead of the general service businesses and things like that, because you have to be in today's world because you're competing with Amazon. But what other questions do you have to ask? Like, what's your conversion rate? I've talked about it a few times. Basically, conversion rate is what is the percent of time people actually do what you want them to do on the certain page of your site or on the whole page of your site. So how you figure that out is the number of visitors that visit your site, and then how many people accomplish the goal. So if you had 1,000 people visit your website, 10 of them did what you wanted to do. Let's say it's a contact form submission. It means your website converted at a 1% conversion rate. So at that point in time, you're within about what it could be doing. But what if you tweak these numbers a bit? So this is some marketing math here. So if you take that same 1,000 people at the 1% conversion rate, and this is kind of when we start talking about your own sales data. This is very simplified. So I don't want to, there are whole Excel sheets and calculators that someone could dive in with you, that we have, that other people have, that you can get really specific with this. But I just want to show as an example to where, let's say out of those 10 people, that's a contact form, let's say you're a landscaper, of the 10 contact forms, typically you'll get a 20% closing rate. So if your average sale is $500, that means you made 2 sales. You just brought $1,000 in new sales from those 1,000 visitors, right? So you're getting about $1 per website visitor. So you have that math, right? So, but this is where I get really excited because I like the power of small numbers, to where if you can tweak a few things, improve maybe your website or some things in your website or some terminology in your website, or even the speed of your website, any list of a dozen things that you don't want to do at once, but what if we could change it from a 1% to a 3% conversion rate for your business? Doesn't sound like a big number, but as you start looking at this data, you went from $1,000 in new sales to $3,000 in new sales. Nothing else really changed, but you just tripled your advertising return on ad spend for these 1,000 visitors. So what does this do for your marketing budget? You just became 3 times more profitable from the same amount of traffic. So you could keep the same budget that you're spending right now on marketing and triple your return on advertisement if you're testing and measuring and changing some of these things on your site, fixing the leaky holes in your funnel, if you want to think, or your bucket from that way, thinking about it that way, and just assess it. And Google Analytics is an assessment tool. It's not perfect data, but it's your data. So as long as you set it up and remain consistent, you'll be able to fix things. So where does Google Analytics fit? These are some of the metrics we talked about a little bit. So user metrics. So this is the demographic data that marketers love. Who are these people? Who are your sales? Who bought? Who didn't buy? Were they male? What age were they? What location were they? This is all data that Google Analytics you can sort and filter from and organize and so see if people are the right people you want to be getting there are the ones that are there. And it might give you some paradigm shifts inside your business. Behavior metrics. What did they do on your site? Where did they get stuck? Where did they leave? What page did they get to first? How many pages did they go through? What was their journey from their site, from your home page to their contact form? Where did bounce rates, like as you look at bounce rates, where did the bounce rate go up to 90% where people got stuck and left? Maybe they got frustrated. Maybe they couldn't find your form. Maybe they couldn't find your button. Maybe something on that page caused it to go crazy. So I don't know, but it's just data that'll help you plug that hole, right? And then acquisition metrics. So where'd they come from? We talked about that, the UTM codes a bit. And then from some of the reports that Kyle talked about, and then conversion metrics, we've talked about that too. So all of these things you can measure and how have you plug your holes and from past and lead you kind of where you're going from a marketing strategy standpoint. All right.
Can I add something to that for you, Andy?
Absolutely, buddy.
On that? So on the last thing, one thing that I talk to a lot of clients about when I talk about the Google Analytics and what you do for SEO or what you do for your ads or campaigns, when you can see what pages are being viewed a lot and how those pages are converting. For instance, he said your landscaping business, maybe you think you get most of you're like, oh yeah, I want to do more of mosquito repellent business, but that page of your website's not getting many views. Actually, what's getting views is your hardscaping page is getting a lot of views, and that's turning people into leads. Then you might have to rethink what your plan is. Like, do you try to just reinforce that because that page is converting higher, or do you continue to try to, go down the path of, the mosquito spray treatment? So it's really good when you can see what pages are converting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I have about 1 minute left here before I jump into questions. It's a good point for me to leave you. One of the best advice I've ever gotten as I started my journey into becoming a marketing funnel nerd is that focus on one thing. Focus on one funnel, one service, one page, one offer, one campaign, and improve it. And pick that and improve it and commit to it for a period of time. Could be 90 days, could be 6 months. Just pick something. Because if you try to do all this stuff and all of it at once, you're going to put a bunch of work in, you're not going to get the results you want out of it. Pick one thing. If you leave today, one thing is pick your one thing. Don't get excited about everything, because I know entrepreneurs tend to do that, because I'm guilty of that. Pick one. That's it. Simplify, focus, take action. Don't get overwhelmed. Ask for help. There's a lot of people here that can help you. I know a lot of entrepreneurs are lone wolf, and I ran my own business for 5 years, so I was right there with you. But ask for help, utilize your resources, ask questions. Perfect segue. What questions have we got, TK?
Okay, I've got one that just popped up. One moment. Does Google Analytics only track your website metrics originated from their search engine?
No.
Answer is no. Other questions regarding, is there specific recommendations that you're looking for when you sign up for this call? What were you hoping to learn that we haven't covered yet? That's what the chat is for. You can chat privately if you want, or through public. Or what are you struggling with most regarding what's going on with understanding your GA? Anybody have a question for either Kyle or Andy? It doesn't look like any are coming through. The last piece of advice, Kyle, that you would leave the group, what's your leave behind?
So I would just, to expand on Chris's question, Google Analytics tracks all the traffic, where it comes from, and referral traffic is, like I said, it's coming from different other websites or outside the search engine and other marketing strategies. Direct is people typing in your URL. That doesn't have to be in necessarily Google Analytics. It could, or in Google search engine. It could be in Bing search engine or Yahoo search engine, web browser, or Safari, which is the iPhone. And I think it's just, I implore you, if you don't have this set up, to look into it and getting it set up on your website, because you'll find once you do have it set up, we all operate much better when we have all the information. And we may be finding out we've been using, a hammer or the whole time, when we should have been using a screwdriver. So it's just a good indication of being able to take things and take the data and maximize your potential.
Andy, what's your leave behind?
I think that just for me, it's focus on your goals. What Kyle talked about is, what is the goal of your website? And write that down, if you don't have it already, and set up that one goal in Google Analytics and measure it. Do that for a few months and see what you get. So.
And then this is for either one of you before we roll into what's going to be happening next week for our webinar. This is the last question we've got time for. What should our priority be? Placement with Google Guaranteed Business, Google Ads, or placement from organic search?
Yeah, that's a complicated question, because they're all important. Right now, out of the three, I could confidently say Google Guaranteed Business is third right now because of the newness of it. Google Ads is going to get you to the first. If you're not ranking for a particular keyword, it's going to get you to the first page the fastest, right away with your spend. It's going to get you in those search engines. But the organic search allows you to be found more organically without the spend. And over time, the hope is, as you start ranking more strongly organically, that you can start decreasing that spend and use it more strategically.
Excellent answer. Thanks, guys. So Andy, would you give us a preview of what's happening next week? for
Yep.
the people on the call?
You know, I wanted to add a little bit to what Kyle said to her. I would say I like suggesting people to start with PPC because typically those are the people looking right now for your service. Where organic is going to take some time, and PPC is going to be typically your faster return on your money. So organic is going to take some time. So ideally, you should be doing both. But just by having a good website that's mobile optimized and being able to be found on Google is going to start your SEO stuff. But PPC and picking, again, one campaign, one service, one offer, start there. So anyway, next week. So how to structure the perfect promotion to stick out in a crazy world. Next week is going to be same time. And then after next week, we're going to do every other week webinar. So something that'll change. Well, we have two experts from the Midwest Family Lacrosse, Jen O'Brien and Gene Taylor. They're going to bring their decades of experience to help you guys strengthen your promotions and things like that. So really excited to have them on, and looking forward to you guys coming back next week. You should get in the replay. You'll get an opportunity to register for this next webinar to reserve your spot. I encourage you to do that. You'll get these slides so you can have access to the resources in here, and feel free to reach out to this email. And if you have any questions, maybe for your specific business, for me or Kyle or any of the other experts here at Midwest Family, we'd love to help guide you through this because it is overwhelming. It's a behemoth of a tool. It can get really frustrating. So we're here for you. All right.
So thanks, everybody. See you next week.